What if a single buried truth hidden in a vault, erased from a textbook, or whispered only in classified corridors, could rewrite the entire story of humanity? Not just a new chapter, but a completely different book. Today, we're diving into 10 suppressed events that would change everything we know about humanity. A journey into the shadows where forgotten civilizations, forbidden experiments, and inconvenient discoveries quietly sit waiting for someone brave enough to look closer. As you listen, pay attention to the patterns, the timelines that don't add up, the discoveries that were dismissed too quickly, the events that should have changed the world, but somehow didn't. There's a reason these stories never made the headlines, and by the end of this video you may find yourself questioning just how much of human history was carefully edited before it reached us. If you're someone who loves uncovering hidden truths, feel free to support the channel. It helps us bring more investigations like this to life. Number 10 is the Ural Map Stone, the artifact that didn't fit any timeline. In 1999, deep in the Chelyabinsk region of Russia, construction workers unearthed a massive slab of stone, unlike anything archaeologists had seen. At first glance, it looked like a carved relief map. Mountains, rivers, valleys, all etched with impossible precision. But once geologists examined it, they made a discovery that should have rewritten human history. This stone map appeared to be over 100,000 years old. If that were true, it meant some intelligence was charting landscapes long before Homo sapiens were believed to possess the cognitive capacity for such engineering. And the carvings weren't random. They aligned with modern topographical surveys nearly perfectly. Whoever made this had access to either aerial observation or advanced surveying technology. The most unsettling detail, embedded within the stone, were thin lines resembling channels or roads, engineered features, not natural ones. When researchers attempted to study it further, the artifact mysteriously vanished from public view. Officials denied having it. Museums refused to comment. And the scientist who first tried to publish on it, Alexander Chuvarov, suddenly stopped giving interviews altogether. Some say the stone challenges too many accepted timelines. Others claim it hints at a lost civilization that predates every known human culture, a civilization capable of mapping land from the sky. If so, then the question changes from who built it to something even more disturbing. What else did they leave behind that we haven't found yet? Imagine for a moment what it would mean if humanity is not the first advanced culture on Earth. If our history is not a straight line, but a series of rises and collapses. The Ural Map Stone suggests exactly that, which may be why it seemingly disappeared the moment experts began asking the wrong questions. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes. Our past is not only older than we think, it's stranger. And the Ural Map Stone is only the beginning. Number 9 is the 1899 Tesla transmission incident, the signal no one wanted to acknowledge. In the late summer of that year, Nikola Tesla was deep into his experiments at the Colorado Springs laboratory. He was trying to test wireless electrical transmission. But in the middle of one particularly powerful burst, his instruments picked up something completely unexpected, a repeating signal. Not static, not natural atmospheric noise. A patterned rhythmic sequence. Tesla immediately believed it was artificial and intelligent communication coming from somewhere beyond Earth. His private notes described it as a numerical code and claimed the signal was so structured that it could not be geological, meteorological, or mechanical. He even wrote that it felt like a greeting from one planet to another. But when he presented his findings, the scientific community dismissed them instantly. Not analyzed, not debated, simply buried under claims of instrument error. Newspapers that initially covered the story were suddenly silent. Funding for Tesla's wireless projects dried up within months. And soon after the Colorado lab, the very place where the signal was received mysteriously burned to the ground. What made this event so suspicious was that the signal was detected again decades later by independent researchers, using different equipment in different locations. Yet each time someone reported it, the response was identical denial, ridicule, and quick disappearance from the public conversation. Many historians believe Tesla stumbled on something far larger than a simple transmission. Perhaps a message, perhaps a beacon, perhaps evidence that humanity was not the first species to explore communication across space, or even the most advanced. If Tesla had been taken seriously, humanity might have leapt ahead a century in understanding our place in the cosmos. Instead, the incident was quietly erased, reduced to a footnote in his biography. And the signal, it still appears occasionally on deep space monitoring logs, though always classified, always redacted, as if whatever contacted Tesla in 1899 is still out there, waiting for someone willing to listen. Number 8 is the forbidden Sahara layer, the geological stratum that should not exist. In 2012, a joint Franco-Algerian research team drilling core samples along the edge of the Sahara Desert made a discovery so disruptive that the results were quietly sealed before peer review. Buried nearly 20 meters below the shifting dunes, they found a thin, unmistakable layer of fused silica and carbonized organic material, a signature normally associated with either a massive meteor impact or a technological event involving extreme heat. But the dating made no sense. This layer wasn't from the era of dinosaurs or early hominids. Radiocarbon tests placed it at roughly 11,600 years old, precisely the moment the last ice age ended, and eerily close to the timeline of global flood myths that appear in dozens of ancient cultures who never had contact with one another. Within that layer were microscopic spheres of melted metal fragments of rare minerals and the chemical remnants of what one researcher privately called a thermal event beyond anything our current civilization could produce. The Sahara, long assumed to be a barren wasteland, throughout ancient history, suddenly looked like the site of something catastrophic and possibly artificial. According to leaked notes later circulated among geologists, the fused layer was consistent with either a directed energy event or a massive technological catastrophe. But those words never made it into official documentation. Instead, the team's findings were abruptly classified under regional environmental sensitivity and the researchers were reassigned. The real question is, why suppress such a discovery? Because acknowledging it could mean acknowledging that the Sahara was not always a desert, that it might once have been home to an advanced culture wiped out in a single moment of unimaginable force. Satellite images later revealed what appear to be straight lines, roads, canals, or foundations beneath the sand, too geometric to be natural. Yet every attempt to study them has been blocked under claims of preserving archaeological integrity. If the forbidden Sahara layer truly represents the remnants of a lost civilization destroyed by technology beyond our understanding, then human history is not just incomplete. It's hiding a chapter that ended in fire. And if such a civilization fell, once we must ask how many times has humanity risen and fallen before us. Number 7 is the 1740 Vatican Codex blackout, the manuscript that rewrote early human history, then vanished. In the mid-18th century, the Vatican quietly began cataloguing thousands of ancient manuscripts collected from monasteries, private libraries, and excavated ruins. Among them was a mysterious leather-bound codex written in a hybrid script, part Proto-Greek, part something no linguist could identify. According to archived correspondence between two curators, the text described a civilization that predated Sumer by tens of thousands of years, a culture the manuscript referred to only as the Builders. The Builders were said to possess knowledge of astronomy far beyond what should have been possible for early humans. The manuscript outlined their understanding of precession orbital mechanics and even what sounded like descriptions of moving stars, objects traveling across the sky with deliberate trajectories. Most unsettling of all, the Codex claimed these beings did not disappear. Instead, they withdrew, leaving behind vaults of stone that speak without words. Linguists who examined the text noted references to global coastlines that matched those of the Late Ice Age, not the Bronze Age. That detail alone should have sparked a revolution in archaeological theory. But instead, after a brief flurry of internal discussion, the document was locked away. In 1740, all mention of the Codex abruptly stopped. Several scholars who had been working on translations were reassigned. A few travelled abroad and never returned. And the last known record, a catalogue entry, was overwritten with a single red note, non recensendum, not to be reviewed. Rumours among Vatican archivists, whispered across generations, claimed the Codex contained a prophecy describing the return of the Builders during a future celestial alignment. Others say it mapped locations of ancient sites, still undiscovered places, whose existence would contradict nearly every accepted model of early human development. Modern researchers attempting to trace the Codex's path have hit dead ends at every step. Requests for access are denied. References to it in handwritten correspondence have been inked out. Even the catalogue number appears to have been reassigned to a different unrelated document. The silence raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if the Codex wasn't suppressed because it was wrong, but because it was too accurate? If an advanced Ice Age civilization left behind knowledge, powerful enough to reshape our understanding of human origins, then those who guard the past may feel compelled to guard its secrets as well. Because some truths don't just challenge history, they threaten the present. Number 6 is the Baikal, anomaly, the Cold War incident, both superpowers tried to bury. During the late 1980s, Lake Baikal, the deepest freshwater lake on Earth, became the site of a series of encounters so baffling both the Soviet Union and later the Russian Federation classified every detail. It began when military divers trained for extreme depth operations reported seeing humanoid figures swimming alongside them at depths where no human should survive. These beings were described as tall, slender, and clothed in a smooth, metallic-looking suit. They had no visible breathing apparatus. They moved effortlessly through frigid water at speeds that defied physics. According to leaked logs, the divers attempted to capture one of the entities during a scheduled training mission. What happened next was swift and disastrous. A sudden pressure wave erupted from below, sending the entire dive team hurtling toward the surface. 3 of the divers died from rapid decompression, an ascent so fast it shattered bone and burst capillaries. The survivors were hospitalized for weeks. Within days of the incident, all training around that sector of the lake was halted indefinitely. Then came the strangest part. Satellite monitoring of the region detected massive, fast-moving underwater objects traveling at speeds comparable to fighter jets, speeds no known submarine could achieve. Both the USSR and the United States took notice. American intelligence began tracking similar anomalies near the Mariana Trench and the Bermuda Triangle. But the Baikal case remained unique because it involved direct visual contact. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, a few retired officers attempted to speak publicly about the encounters. Each time the interviews were abruptly cut short, or the footage was mysteriously lost. In one rare surviving transcript, an officer described the beings as not hostile, but warning us not to follow. What makes this event so significant is not merely the report of unidentified undersea beings, but the implications. If these entities exist, they may represent a civilization far older than ours, inhabiting parts of the planet we still know almost nothing about. Oceans cover 70% of Earth's surface, and more than 80% remains unexplored. The Baikal anomaly forces us to consider an unsettling possibility. Humanity may not be the dominant intelligence on this planet. We may simply be the dominant intelligence on land. Whatever the divers encountered in 1980s Siberia, both governments decided the world wasn't ready to know. And perhaps they were right. Number 5 is the Antikythera revision. The moment we realized the ancient world was far more advanced than we were allowed to believe. Most people know the Antikythera mechanism as the world's first computer discovered in a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901. What most people don't know is that the device we see in museums today, the one presented as a simple astronomical calculator, is only a fraction of what was originally recovered. When the mechanism was pulled from the seabed, divers described far more components than what the public would eventually learn about: additional plates, a sealed copper cylinder, and what appeared to be an engraved diagram showing multiple gears arranged in a pattern that resembled orbital pathways. But by the time official photographs were released, those extra pieces were nowhere to be found. The reason, according to internal memos leaked by a Greek conservator in the 1950s, the full device suggested a level of mechanical engineering not seen again until the 18th century. It contained tolerances so precise they would have required tools that officially did not exist in the ancient world. One missing plate reportedly referenced cycles far beyond simple eclipses, something closer to planetary resonance predictions akin to modern astrophysics. The moment this information began circulating, a quiet international intervention followed. Museums were advised unofficially to focus on the history-friendly interpretation, a clever but ultimately limited astronomical calendar. Academic papers describing the more advanced findings were retracted or edited down. And the most disruptive idea of all, that the Greeks, or perhaps an even older civilization, possessed knowledge rivaling early modern science, was quietly pushed aside. The suppressed controversy resurfaced in 2005 when high-resolution scans revealed hidden inscriptions referencing spheres' alignments and a mechanism described as the guidance of the wanderers. In ancient Greek texts, wanderers referred to the planets. But some historians argue the wording suggests something more, an attempt to track objects not visible to the naked eye. If true, the Antikythera mechanism wasn't simply a calculator, it was a navigational device, possibly even a predictive one. Imagine ancient sailors using a machine capable of modeling celestial bodies with remarkable precision, guiding them across vast distances with accuracy we believed was impossible for the time. Or picture a forgotten culture far older than Greece passing down fragments of extraordinary knowledge until only this one machine remained. The real mystery isn't how the Antikythera mechanism was built. It's why the full truth about it was hidden. Because if ancient civilizations possessed technology centuries ahead of their era, then the story of human progress is not a steady climb. It's a cycle of rise, collapse, and rediscovery. Number 4 is the Nazca interference event, the aerial anomaly witnessed before flight was even invented. The Nazca lines of Peru have puzzled archaeologists for over a century. Their sheer scale, visible only from the sky, has led to endless speculation. But few people know that in 1933, long before drones, satellites, or Google Earth, a series of classified aerial photographs captured something that would quietly redefine the mystery. During a survey mission by the Peruvian Air Corps pilots, reported seeing a sudden distortion, a shimmering heat-like ripple hovering directly above one of the largest geoglyphs, the so-called hummingbird. At first, the pilots assumed it was atmospheric distortion, but when they banked for a closer look, the ripple solidified into a transparent lens-shaped object. It hovered silently, then shot upward with impossible acceleration, disappearing into the thin Andean air. The photos from that flight were supposed to remain routine documentation of desert topography. Instead, they captured a faint disc-shaped blur aligned perfectly over the geoglyph's center. The object's outline, though subtle, was visible enough that the military could not dismiss it as a cloud or camera malfunction. Within weeks, foreign intelligence agencies requested copies. The United States sent representatives under the guise of cartographic cooperation. Germany attempted to purchase the negatives outright, and Peru's military, under growing pressure, declared the photographs defective and locked them away. Why such secrecy? Because the timing and location were impossible to ignore. Many of the Nazca lines function as landing strips only when viewed from above. Some are perfectly aligned to astronomical events, and others, when mapped onto a 3D curvature model of the Earth, form precise geometric relationships with pyramids, megaliths, and sacred sites around the globe. It's as if an unseen intelligence once used these lines as markers, guides, or communication grids tools for something that traversed the skies long before humanity learned to fly. The 1933 interference event wasn't the only one. Local farmers have long spoken of lights that stop above the ground drawings and stars that sit still in the daytime. But oral histories are easy to ignore. Photographic evidence is not. If the Nazca glyphs were created for an aerial audience, then the real question isn't how they were made, but who they were meant for. And if the 1933 object was observing them or interacting with them, then the Nazca Desert may have served as a meeting ground between two worlds separated not just by time but by technology. Some lines were drawn for gods, some for spirits, and perhaps some for visitors who one day promised to return. Number 3 is the Lahun Seal break the Egyptian chamber that should have changed archaeology forever. In 1923, while excavating near the pyramid of Senusret II at Lahun, a small British team discovered a sealed stone door deep beneath the burial complex. Unlike typical tomb entrances, this one was reinforced with an unusual pitch-black resin that modern chemists later determined did not exist anywhere else in ancient Egypt. When the door was finally breached, the team expected a modest storage chamber. What they found instead has never been publicly acknowledged. According to the private journal of lead excavator Ernest Whitfield, a document leaked decades after his death, the chamber contained a metallic box perfectly preserved, composed of an alloy that resisted corrosion even under 4,000 years of burial. The box was covered in geometric engravings that bore no resemblance to hieroglyphs. More strangely, the symbols repeated in a fractal pattern, as if encoding mathematical principles far beyond what Middle Kingdom Egypt should have understood. Inside the box were 3 items: a thin crystal disc a length of impossibly fine gold wiring, and a tablet carved with a map. A map that showed the Nile Valley, but not as it existed during the pharaohs. It showed it as it appeared thousands of years earlier, during a period when the river's course was radically different, long before Egyptian civilization emerged. Whitfield wrote that the chamber felt older than the pyramid itself, as though the structure had been built around it. In one entry, he speculated the find might belong to a culture predating dynastic Egypt, a civilization whose knowledge was later inherited or selectively adopted by the pharaohs. The implication was staggering. Egypt's golden age may have been a revival, not an origin. Within days of the discovery, government officials, both British and Egyptian, seized the artifacts. Whitfield's team was ordered to cease all exploration of the lower chambers. Reports were rewritten. The official record now states that the room contained minor funerary objects. Those who protested were blacklisted from future digs. The real mystery lies in the crystal disc. In his journal, Whitfield claimed that when light passed through it, the engravings projected patterns onto the chamber wall's constellations not visible from Egypt's latitude. and one star cluster that would not align with Earth's sky for another 12,000 years. A warning, a calendar, or a message meant to be found only when humanity reached a certain level of understanding. If the Lahan seal break is real, if that chamber truly belonged to a forgotten precursor civilization, then nearly everything we attribute to ancient Egypt may be a hand-me-down from a culture lost twice over, first to time and then to silence. Number 2 is the 1907 human genome interruption. The moment scientists realized our evolution may not have been entirely natural. In the late 1970s, a quiet project housed inside a university basement lab in Berkeley made a discovery so disruptive that even today researchers who were involved refused to speak publicly. The team, led by molecular biologist Dr. Elise Harland, was among the first to analyze newly sequenced fragments of the human genome using advanced computational methods. They expected to find random mutations, natural selection markers, and evolutionary drift. What they found instead was a pattern, a repeating sequence of non-coding DNA organized with a structure so mathematically precise that it resembled encryption more than evolution. At first, Harlan suspected a machine error, but after multiple independent tests, the pattern held. It was as if a section of the genome had been inserted, not grown. Even more disturbing, the same pattern was absent in the genomes of early human ancestors, including Homo erectus and Neanderthals. It appeared suddenly about 200,000 years ago. That date aligns uncomfortably well with the emergence of anatomically modern humans. The twist came when the team compared the sequence to global mythologies. What began as a scientific study shifted into something stranger. Nearly every ancient culture, from the Dogon to the Sumerians to the Aboriginal Australians, described an era when sky beings, teachers, or shining ones altered early humanity. These stories, once dismissed as legend, suddenly felt like echoes of a forgotten intervention. The team prepared a paper proposing that early humans experienced a directed mutation event, a term vague enough to invite debate but accurate enough to raise alarms. Before the paper could be submitted, the lab was abruptly shut down. Funding vanished. The university claimed the equipment malfunctioned and invalidated all experimental results. Harlan vanished from academia. 2 researchers left the country. The data every byte disappeared from the servers. But the twist doesn't end there. In 1999, a whistleblower from a biotech company claimed they had rediscovered the same pattern while sequencing modern genomes for commercial applications. According to the leak, this sequence behaves differently from all others. It resists mutation. It maintains structural integrity across generations. It acts, in their words, like a lock or a signature. If true, it means human evolution may have been nudged, guided, or deliberately rewritten by forces unknown. Not in ancient temples or mythic skies, but in our cells, in our blood, in the code that makes us who we are. And the greatest twist of all, some researchers now believe that sequence is changing again. Number 1 is the 1908 Tunguska reversal, the explosion that didn't behave like an explosion at all. Most people know the Tunguska event as the largest impact blast in recorded history, a mysterious 12-megaton explosion that flattened 80 million trees across Siberia. But what textbooks fail to mention is that from the very beginning, scientists noticed something deeply wrong with the event, something that broke every rule of physics, every model of meteor impacts, and every expectation of natural behavior. Eyewitnesses described the same impossible detail again and again. The sky lit up from below, as if the light was rising from the ground rather than falling from the heavens. Moments later, the shockwave ripped through the forest, not outward from a single point, but in a strange helical pattern, as if the force had spiraled across the landscape instead of radiating normally. And then there were the trees at the epicenter itself. They weren't blown away. They were still standing, stripped bare, but rooted as if something had passed above them and changed direction at the last second. When a Soviet expedition finally reached the site years later, their measurements uncovered an even more disturbing anomaly. The magnetic field in the area had been reversed, twisted into a configuration that should have been impossible without directed energy or advanced electromagnetic manipulation. In one unclassified fragment of a field report, a geophysicist wrote that the readings resembled the aftermath of a controlled event, not a natural one. Controlled by what or whom remains the real question. Some speculated it was a failed extraterrestrial landing. Others proposed a weapon test by a forgotten civilization, or even an atmospheric event triggered by something from beneath the Earth rather than above it. But the strangest theory came from a small group of researchers who believed Tunguska wasn't an explosion at all, but a deflection. They claimed that something deliberately prevented an object, perhaps far larger, far more catastrophic, from reaching the ground. Something intervened. Something redirected the impact mid-descent, sacrificing itself to save the region from annihilation. This theory gained momentum when fragments of unknown alloy were reported near the blast zone in 1962, only to be confiscated by Soviet authorities and never seen again. The official explanation: contaminated metallic debris from industrial activity in the middle of uninhabited Siberia. But perhaps the most unsettling part is what locals have whispered for generations: that after the blast, their elders saw a star rise from the forest, damaged, flickering, before vanishing into the sky. If Tunguska wasn't a random cosmic accident, if it was an intervention, then it means humanity may have been watched, protected, or even monitored by a presence that stepped in once, and perhaps is not needed to step in again. Human history is a tapestry woven not just from what we've discovered, but from what we've been allowed to know. Across deserts, oceans, archives, and even our own DNA, the same pattern keeps emerging: clues left in plain sight, events quietly rewritten, and truths buried just deep enough that only the curious ever notice. But if these 10 suppressed events have taught us anything tonight, it's that the world we inherited is far stranger and far older than our textbooks admit. And the deeper we dig, the more impossible it becomes to ignore the feeling that something out there is still watching, waiting, or remembering. There are more mysteries ahead, more files to open, more forgotten chapters begging to be uncovered. And in our next video, we'll follow a trail even darker than this one that might reshape everything you think you know about the origins of power itself. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed today's story, make sure to like and subscribe. It truly helps me create more content for you.